Welcome to the land of no easy answers. Our world, though more connected than ever, seems to have forgotten how to connect. Everywhere you look, the disconnect is obvious, from nature to the people around us, and even within ourselves. This is Alex Knight, and thank you for joining us as we attempt to unravel the mysteries of the mind and your universe. Now let's meet our panel. Over in one corner is Kristin Rumohr. And in the other corner is Stewart.
What?
All right. Well, today is going to be a bit of a heavy topic here. We're going to talk about death.
I thought this was the light topic,
And yeah, well, if this is the light
that
topic,
was the fake-out topic. We're keeping it light today, but we're going to talk about death.
I don't know if
light little topic of death.
if this is light, I'm not sure what a difficult topic would be. But we're gonna talk about death because there's a recurring theme with everything that we do here. Everything always seems to come back to this, the mind, the brain. And, death is a very difficult thing that we have to deal with. It's a reality, and it's something that everyone processes death differently, especially if you start looking at how different cultures deal with it. Even within the animal kingdom, it's all different. It's all over the map. I have my own issues with it. I probably think about it far too much. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly healthy to think about your own mortality on a daily basis, but I definitely spend a lot of time thinking about it. And Kristin, obviously you had a recent tragedy in your life too with your grandma, and if you don't feel comfortable talking about it or going into it that much, that's okay. But we're here.
Fresh, but...
we're here to talk about death.
We're having the death podcast, but don't talk about the death.
Yeah. So.
Oh, Alex.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about death, so we kind of have to. I'm going to talk about my own issues with death, and I'm not really sure. Maybe you guys can both help me. And Kristin, as somebody who actually has some training in the world of mental health as a holistic clinical counselor. It's one thing I've never been able to figure out is why death is constantly on my mind. Why is it that some people can live about their daily lives without thinking about it all that often? But I spend an inordinate amount of time just processing it and thinking about what is my life going to be like without me being here. And I think what drags me down the most is knowing that all the hard work I've put into making myself a better person and learning new things just completely goes out the window. And also, what legacy do I leave behind? Am I going to leave anything behind? Have I made an impact in any kind of meaningful way on anybody that I've met? And I'm not so sure that I have, and I just feel like it really drags me down.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
You touched me, buddy, and in a good way, I guess. That should clarify.
Yeah, I mean, does anyone have any insights? What do I do? How do I stop thinking about death? And why would somebody think about death so often? That's the question. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think it's normal for us to consider it, right? Like, we are conscious beings. This is literally the one thing, as far as we know, that sets us apart from being an animal, is we are the only creatures we're aware of that are aware of our impending demise, right? I don't think any other creature goes through life knowing that they're going to die. It's just an inevitable thing that's going to happen, right? So how do we wrap our heads around this? It's a tough one. And, having, these egos as well that make us feel very self-important and, entitled within the universe. It's, how do you now step outside of that and say, what's the world like without me? Because I am my world, essentially. You are your world.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You're right. You touched on something important with ego. That's totally a part of it, because we probably all think that we're more important than we really are, right?
Yeah, and to expand on that, like your idea that animals don't necessarily have that feeling, I don't necessarily agree with that. More and more, they're finding that animals are capable of the same range of emotions, and like we used to think animals didn't feel physical pain, which seems just ludicrous to me, right? Like
Right.
if you do something mean to an animal, they react as if they feel pain. So, right? And it was a delusion that we had told ourselves to allow us to do these things to the animals that we've done, you know? But I think that, again, that's part of our ego thing where we like to think that we're better than or higher than all of these other creatures on this planet, but it's only through some sheer fluke of whatever got us here that we are what we are. And I think, again, it's only our ego that allows us to think that we're better than them,
Sure. Yeah,
So,
I mean, I definitely believe that animals, at least different animals, I think they do. I mean, you can just look at elephants and how they honor their dead and stuff like that, and like their own memories. But yeah, I think that there are animals that definitely feel pain, that definitely feel
they all
grief,
do.
that definitely
like,
feel
to a
grief to a degree of some kind, right? So there is definitely that too.
I mean, even if you get down to the level of bacteria, they're reacting to their environment, and it may be a rudimentary form of it, but there's a certain amount of, idea that consciousness goes way deeper than we understand. And that our idea of we were granted consciousness, and so therefore nothing else could possibly possess this, again, just seems like an ego trip for me, right? Like, yeah, we're the best thing out there, hey? Like, like, I just can't agree with that, despite all evidence to whatever you may point to, I also look to the fact that by tomorrow we could all end this by being stupid. So,
Yeah, yeah. You're referring to
so
are you referring to from the religious aspect that
well, I mean, you even look at what's
consciousness
going on in
was
Palestine and Israel right now, right? Like they're bombing each other, and this is just going to end in more blood.
Sure.
And I just how do you fix something like that and make it so that we can come to an understanding and a compromise on any of this, right? And I mean, with religion in the way, I don't know how it's possible.
Yeah.
Without removing that layer of indoctrination and dogma, and this is what we do because that's what we do. How do you ever get, right? Like, how are you ever supposed to see the other person's side if all you see is this?
Gotcha.
And I think that's a good portion of the issues that we face with a lot of this shit. And it comes down to even how we deal with death. And if you view the other person's rituals as stupid and why the fuck, like you bury yourself 6 feet out, like what's like, and you have these, like, you come by every year and drop flowers on this place, like what's like, right? Like a lot of cultures would view that as strange and weird, and what are you guys doing? So I think it really just, the idea that we all fear death is universal. And I think that should bring us together in a lot of this kind of thing, and should allow us to see past a lot of that shit to understand that we're all here together, and that this is all going to end together, right? Despite the fact that we feel separate while we're here. I like to think that, you were saying how you worry that when you leave, nothing you were when you hear will stay. And I did, like, Jane Fonda actually talked about how she feels her father sometimes in just the right, and how the simple fact that the pictures of those people's and the emotions that made you feel stays inside you in some form, even if it's just the energy involved for you to bring their memory back up every once in a while, right? So I don't think that they necessarily disappear completely, and I think we do actually get to keep some part of us here, right, through connections to others.
I suppose
I like to think that reality is all, like, my reality is just this, what I can see in front of me technically, as far as the science and the universe and even computer hologram theory states, everything behind me, if I can't see it, could technically not exist.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like, my brain can only process what I see and what I feel and what's here right now. everything else is kind of second. So technically, like I can see you on video right now, but that doesn't technically mean that you actually are here. You could just be a construct of my brain that I'm projecting onto this, and it could be all just this. All I'm getting is this.
Well, that's the idea. Yeah, reality is subjective to each and every individual person. Right. There is no.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So I think it's a collective of us that makes reality 3D, makes this solid, basically. You know, if there were one of us, you know, I wonder if the rest of this would, you know, and it was only the one consciousness and only one thing to see this, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's you're getting pretty deep and philosophical here.
Well, there is the death episode, so I'm pretty sure that, you know, like we're either going, there's a lot of different ways that we could take this, and I was trying to keep it not mopey. Right?
I thank you for that.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I think that, you know, how we deal with death says a lot about us as well, right? Like I like the idea of no matter how bad and ruthless and, you know, mean this world can be, I think our best, you know, course of action in trying to get around this is some humor and some understanding that we're all in this together and that we could help each other out with it, you know? So, you know, your grandma died today and I'm really sorry about that. And my job is to just try to make your life a little bit better and support you so that we can get you through what you need to get through, you know? So we're here for you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, it's out of love.
I think a lot of the difficulty as well for myself just now, obviously going through it, and for a lot of other people, I'm sure, is how are you supposed to feel, right? Yeah. Because we now have created all these rituals around it. And as a society, death is meant to be sad. So you're meant to grieve. You're meant to, you know, go through these processes. So for myself now, it's, well, how am I supposed to, right? I'm someone that prefers to focus on the positives, that prefers to celebrate, right? So for me, it's a rite of passage. We all have to get there eventually, right? So it's, you know, you kind of acknowledge that the energy has been released with love and it's gone back into whatever happens next, right? We're all getting there too. But now it's, am I supposed to be feeling, should I be in tears right now, right? Should I be feeling this? Should I be acting in this way? What's appropriate? And so all of this kind of gets wrapped up into my own process of grief and just makes it a little bit more cloudy, I think. And Alex, you touched earlier on what other cultures do, right? In Western culture, I feel like we really kind of drag it out in a very mopey, negative sort of way, right? And a lot of other cultures are more on the celebratory side of things, right?
Right. Well, yeah, you can, if you look at how, you know, you go to a typical North American funeral, if you go to a wake, you know, it's very solemn but in other cultures, it could be the complete opposite of that. People are happy, they're dancing, they're singing. It's a celebration of that person's life. And I really respect that. And I honestly think that would make things a lot better and a lot easier to deal with if you actually made that effort to say, like, look, let's not be sad. This person had a great life. Let's sing and dance and, you know, let's remember who that person was and the impact that they had on our lives, right?
And it's not so much as we look at it as it's all loss, right? Yeah, that's how it's labeled. It's loss. And instead, it's maybe we can try flipping that a little bit. It's not a loss; it's a transformation. We just don't know what that transformation is right now. Yes, and that's scary for us, right? We like to know exactly what's coming next. We want to be logical and plan accordingly. Yeah. And we just don't know. But it's energy at the end of the day. I think we did an episode on this a while back. Yeah. And that's what happens, right? It cannot be destroyed or created, only transformed. So we know that it goes somewhere, right? So instead of focusing on this loss. Sorry, my thoughts are all jumbled up.
No, that's okay.
Oh, good. No, that was beautiful. And that's like, there's a lot of cultures that believe that, you know, life is technically the aberration in the universe, right? Like if you look at over the lifespan of the billions and billions and billions of years of the universe, your whole life is not even, it's, I can't even make a sound quick enough to demonstrate just how infinitesimal what we have here is. And so a lot of cultures view it as more a return to normalcy, right? Like being energy is more the normal state of the universe versus this matter thing and this, you know, conscious mind trying to move parts of our body around and make sense of what the fuck we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of cultures that celebrate the fact that you have now lost your shackles of your life in this form we take and are now able to go out into the universe and be what you were originally before you were trapped here, right? And again, that I think celebrates the energy of it versus it being just about you and what you did, right? And just your ego of this person has to stay here because we can't lose this person because they were so special. You know, instead of the energy of what they are and how they made you feel is what's important. You know, if you love that person, they never die because they'll stay here in your heart. You know, and that energy I think is really what animates, you know, a lot of this, you know, feeling of fear.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose, you know, one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode was how different people process death. And, you know, a big part of us as a species, in many ways, of dealing with death is also procreation. Well, why do we have children, right? Yeah. It's about that legacy, leaving that legacy behind too, because I think otherwise without that, for a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, certainly as someone who doesn't want kids, and, you know, I'm almost 40 and I haven't had kids and I have no plans to have children yet, you know, as someone who doesn't have it, not everyone wants them, but I can understand why somebody would want to have children because they want that legacy. Maybe, you know, maybe they feel that, hey, if I have children, maybe they'll grow up to do something amazing. Maybe they'll grow up to be a doctor. Maybe they'll cure cancer. Maybe they'll, and it's a way of, I think it's a way of like somehow like compartmentalizing your own mortality too. That's how you live on. That's how you become immortal, is your DNA is being passed on to your children.
I know, as if my DNA is the best thing out there. Hey, I mean, come get it, ladies.
Well, that's a whole nother argument that a lot of people out there probably shouldn't be having children.
But, you know, and that you get down to the biological fact that, you know, due to death rates, we need to keep a certain number of people coming, right? So if nobody's having kids, that becomes a problem for us, right?
So if any, the world's already overpopulated. What we don't need right now is more fucking people on the planet.
But it's not true. I mean, we live in Canada. You want to tell me there's no space here?
Yeah. Well, a lot.
The world in total, I think, is overpopulated.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
We have chosen to put people into overpopulated spaces.
Yeah, okay.
We live in a city where there should not be this many people. And in order for this city to survive, we now have to go out into outlying centers and pull shit from there just to keep city running. Right? Simple facts. Right? Like we can't grow enough food to sustain this many people. We don't have enough, you know, materials to make the concrete or the glass or the anything to, right? Like our phones aren't being made here. So, you know, that's the thing. Like we've made this as a thing, and somehow this other land out there that isn't in the city is somehow less than that, and isn't, like, that's the problem. We've devalued nature to the point where we can't even fathom the idea of, what do you mean we don't live all crammed together in a big building and I get 400 square feet of space to cram myself into and go, yeah, this is normal. Right? Like, you know, and then this idea again that we don't have enough people. Well, if we'd stop wasting so much food, if we would stop wasting so much time and energy and gas and everything, you know, if we would lay ourselves into a position where you didn't have to have all of this excess stuff, you would be surprised how much what we actually produce now could sustain everyone. But, you know, when you have, you know, they talk about the 1%, right? And the fact that their usage of all of these things that everyone else could be using is so much higher than anyone else's, that it's just, you know, it seems odd that we have this argument, and it seems something that the rich invented to make us feel like we got to do more. Instead of something that's actually, you know, laid out in the facts of, like, you look at 1/3 of the food waste and you go, well, doesn't that imply that there is enough and we're just shitty managers of it?
That's probably a big part of it, right?
Yeah. You know, well, I'm guessing that's most of it, realistically, again, right? Like, you know, when there's farms that are literally creating mountains of, like, when the harvest goes, you pass any field, like pumpkins. Pumpkins are a great example of this. Pass a pumpkin field after they've harvested out all the big pumpkins, and it's just shit lying on the ground. There's pumpkins that they will just leave to rot on the ground out there. Yep. And those pumpkins could be used for something. You could make a pumpkin pie, couldn't you? Even if it's not a nice pumpkin that's perfectly formed and the grocery store only takes the perfect ones. So anything that's got a ding in it or has a little, they can't sell it. Right. And it gets wasted. Mm-hmm. You know, so again, there's all sorts of things that we could be doing that would make this better.
You know, we talked about waste. We talked about that we're obviously not very good stewards of the planet that we're living on. You know, I talked about earlier about there being too many people on the planet. And obviously there is a lot of food waste going on. And, you know, that's one of the things that I remember. You know, my grandma passed away about 4 years ago. One of the things I always remember growing up with her, because she was a great cook. I spent a lot of time as a kid in the kitchen with her. And the one thing I always noticed, and she always told me, was not wasting food. As somebody who grew up in Spain, you know, in poverty, they utilized everything. You know, she would take the bones of the chicken and she would make broth and turn that into soup, and like there would never be any waste. And my attitude was the complete opposite. Like, you know, I'm always happy to throw out scraps or, you know, cut the fat off meat and throw it out and not do anything with it. But she knew how to utilize all the parts of the animal, right? And so that you could make other meals out of it as opposed to just throwing stuff in the trash. So that, to your point, you're right. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people also have forgotten about. Also because in today's culture too, a lot of people don't cook either, right? We tend to order out. There's a whole culture now of just ordering out, right? Especially during a pandemic in the last year, we've seen a huge uptick in delivery. You've got companies like Skip the Dishes, you know, so a lot of us don't cook either. So I don't know what kind of contribution that's making, but yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. There are places, there are societies around the world that don't have enough food to go around, and then you got people like us in North America just throwing out copious amounts of stuff, right?
Yeah, so like you were talking about, you know, your impact when you leave here, and I like to believe that when we do leave, that our, you know, what is our energy or our animus kind of pulls out from us and gets this opportunity to kind of see what happened around us as we go, right? And I would just ask you this, like, as this is happening, if you pulled out and all you saw was just garbage lying around you, right? Like, where's that going to put you? You know, I like to say that, you know, you make your own heaven or hell. I don't believe it's waiting for you. I believe you're making it as we live. Right. And it's not necessarily the construct that, you know, Jesus wants you to believe it is, but it's inside your own head. And it's going to be those things that you construct as your own personal hell or your own personal heaven that you're going to be hopefully given some sort of opportunity to either wallow in or rise above to, you know, like, and that's kind of the point here is that, you know, I feel that, you know, a lot of what we are here does carry through into the next, right? And that we just don't understand how. And like you were saying about how energy never leaves, it's just transferring into something else. You know, we don't understand what dark matter is. We understand there's a whole part of this universe that we can't see, and yet somehow it props up what we are and is inside us here and is part of this. And right, like, so the idea that, you know, there's a whole bunch of these forces and energies that we still don't understand yet, and maybe they interact in another dimensional layer that interacts with ours, but only on that level, and we can't see it because our brains are only equipped to handle this much. And if we were to actually like open up to the full picture, our brains would just go right. and you know, just the rush of the entire knowledge of the universe would just make your brain explode inside your head. And you know, but the idea, I think that again, like part of us, I don't know that it leaves here. I think part of it, like I understand that, we travel through space. And so the idea that the energy somehow stays here, but I also, gravity, we don't understand. How would our energy interact with gravity? How do we know? How do we know that the gravity of the Earth doesn't create a space-time well that pulls our energy with us as we're traveling through here, and we actually do kind of stay in this vicinity? Who knows? Right? So again, the idea that we just are gone, but again, that could be an ego thing too. So,
well, I always, I assume, because I have nothing, there's no evidence to prove that there's any kind of, in whatever construct it would be, if there is one. So I always assume that there is nothing after death. So to your point about this is heaven or hell, you make it, I completely subscribe to that. I think it is you make your life exactly how you want it, and every decision you make, but every decision you make has a consequence, good or bad, positive or negative, right? And how you treat other people makes a difference. So I agree with that. Heaven and hell is right here. It's right now. We are living in it, right? You can see that every day.
I believe that heaven and hell is between your eyes, right here. That's it right there, right? And I think that when we go, we retreat into it, and that facilitates our transfer into whatever else comes after, right? So again, I think you get the chance to kind of travel through your own brain, but it looks like right, like I don't know.
I think at the very least, it's like, even if there's nothing else besides we decompose back into the ground, and that way we still go on living, essentially, right? If our parts kind of go and they go back into the soil, or something eats us, or, which then brings up another point of how we treat our dead in our culture, right? Like pumping them full of chemicals and formaldehyde so they literally can't go back into the earth. Right? That's a whole other thing. And that's very specific to kind of westernized culture, isn't it?
Yeah. Also that we can have our, final viewing of the body. Like that's literally the only reason, is we pretty them up and put on their makeup real nice.
That is so weird. I got to say, that thing has always bothered me, and I just don't get it. All that, because also if you think about it, it's a funeral. Businesses are a massive business. The amount of money that they charge for these types of services, do we really need that? Like, I went to my grandma's funeral, and I couldn't even.
The state's taken over.
I couldn't even look at my grandma. Just no matter what they did and tried to do to make her body still look the way it was before she died, it was like traumatizing. I couldn't even look, and I took one glance at the casket, and I was like, nope, can't do this, walking away, cannot look at it, because her face looked all caved in, and like, it's just, I don't understand it. I don't understand this ritual of pumping a body full of formaldehyde and putting makeup on it to try to, it's like, I'd rather have the good memories in my mind to think about. I don't want the last image in my mind to be of that thing in the box that really isn't them.
Well, this has been fun.
Why don't we end it right there?
Well, I don't know. I thought that was a bit of a downer way to end it, but okay.
Hey, this whole episode's a downer.
No, it wasn't. All I was talking about was celebrating. Jeez, I never once brought this down. Like, that's my thing. Like, I don't believe that this should be a dirge when we die. I think that we should be happy that you lived. Why can't we just celebrate the fact that you had this opportunity to come here?
Yes, exactly. Why can't we? Well,
and allowing people to celebrate how they want, right? Which I'm not going to get too much into it now, but how family and friends and people just get involved in kind of other people's death experience, so to speak, right? But yeah, there's so much control over it that you're not legally allowed to bury your own loved ones, right? You can't cremate them. I'm Norwegian, right? I can't legally do a Viking funeral.
Yeah.
Right? It's instead you have to pay money.
I mean,
there are taxes in death, right? How stupid is that?
Yeah.
Like, you're
so
dead,
weird.
and now your loved ones have to pay money for the state to deal with you. Doesn't make any sense, right?
Very bizarre.
Well, it does make sense if you look at it through the lens of the mortuary industry, right? I mean,
It's an industry.
Yeah.
as soon as you look at them, you go, oh, well, you guys wanted money, and so you convinced the government to give us your money. Oh, okay. Of course. I mean, right? What other explanation is there? Right. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. And
But
so,
yeah. Sorry?
oh, I was just going to say, and to our listeners, if you think that there's nothing after death, that life is utterly meaningless and what we do here doesn't matter, you would be exactly right. There is nothing. So just sit with
Alex
that.
brings us back to reality.
Just sit with that for a while. Contemplate. Contemplate your dreary and useless life. This has been a public service announcement.
And so Kristin, to you, like you were asking like what the proper way of grieving is, and it's whatever you need to do.
Not what I just did.
Well, of course, there isn't a proper way. Yeah.
And that's
Can't play
right,
that
like,
too much, Alex.
but that's the answer: is no one can tell you how to grieve. Simple as that. And whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better about it, and I mean that's what you got to do, you know. And again, it's on us to just try to support it. So that's what I'm here for.
Exactly. We're going to support each other.
I would hope so. Instead of, yelling at each other over my parking spot.
Not that Aaron's bitter about that anymore.
Oh, I am, and I will be, and you'll be hearing about this in the Royal U, which will be published at some point.
Yes, we should actually give a plug because by the time this episode is out, we should have a blog live with a optional newsletter if you want to subscribe to it. It's going to be available at the subvertpodcast.com/blog from the desk of Fluid Brain. If you want to hear more of Aaron's wonderful thoughts from that amazing big brain of his, you should subscribe to the newsletter. Okay. Well, again, Kristin.
That plug, I'm going to say I never saw your face on the thing here. It was always just switching between the two of us. Was your feed even going out today, or am I just missing the?
What are you worried about? Everything's all good here.
I have 2 views here, but it never once showed your face.
Well, it should now. When I switch to myself, you should be able to see me.
Nope. I see me now.
Well, anyways, it's all fine here. So
okay,
that's kind of weird.
I was just making sure that it was at least actually recording you.
No, it's don't worry about the technical details. I got it. It's all good.
Okay.
Here. Okay. Anyways, again, to Kristin, thank you. Or not thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting us have this this opportunity to have this discussion.
That too, but yes, I'm very sorry about what happened with your grandma. I'm sure she was a lovely, lovely person.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for supporting me, guys.
Yes.
We're here for you.
The world.
And on that,
and we're also here for all of you too. So if you ever have a death in the family, I probably won't be there, but feel free to
none of us will
share with us. If you have tips on how to get around ways of dealing with family. In a lot of these cases, having family is going to be a real kind of issue in a lot of these circumstances, and having better ways to navigate that kind of stuff would be helpful for everybody. So if anybody has any tips, feel free to drop them below.
Yeah, exactly. I would actually like to hear from our listeners. I'm very curious how people process death in general. So yes, do let us know because we're all here to learn from each other. That's all the time we have for this week. If you are on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe. This show is available in both video and audio on demand, so you can listen or watch whenever you have time. You can always drop us a comment there in YouTube. Let us know what you want to hear about in the future as far as topics are concerned that relate to the brain and how we deal with the world, I guess, in general. We're available in Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and Stitcher, as well as Spotify and Amazon, all platforms. And once you hit subscribe, you'll get every new episode when we release these, which, by the way, is on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. You can hit us up on social media. We're at the Subvert Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Or send us an email to hello@thesubvertpodcast.com. All right, guys. That's all the time we have for this week. We'll see you next time.